Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. It's been surprisingly about 3 years since we've done a migration go live review and offline demo webinar. So today in this session, we are going to review the go live schedule. We will be doing a demo of the Polaris remote offline circulation. And then we're going to wrap up with some tasks your library can do to prepare for go live. So Kathleen is going to be monitoring chat for me during the webinar. Feel free to pop your questions in there. We'll take questions as we go. And then at the end of each agenda section, we will also pause for any additional questions. So starting out, we're going to review the go live schedule. So this is the timeline of events during the offline leading up to go live. And the date range we're looking at here is August 31st through September 6th. So our go live events are going to kick off on Thursday, August 31st. The Innovative is going to sync the data from production to training before libraries open that day. So this will overwrite any data currently in training, but it will allow the training database to be up to date as possible for the offline period. And then on August 31st, Warren-Newport will start using Polaris remote offline circulation at the start of the day to allow Innovative to begin extracting their Sierra data. All other CCS libraries will continue to be online for this day, and they will be working in production Polaris. After libraries close on August 31st, this is kind of when stuff starts happening. So after libraries close on August 31st, they should disable their sorters, so the sorters cannot do any check-ins. Also at close, libraries should either disable their self-check machines or move them into offline mode. If using your self-checks in an offline mode, I highly recommend checking with your vendor to see, just make sure that feature is available. And also check to see how those offline transaction files will be stored and uploaded. CCS will be disabling telephony. So this will ensure that patrons can't call in and attempt to renew items. And then finally, e-commerce options in the pack will be disabled. Now, as with previous migrations, Innovative will perform a SIP and a Power Pack redirect. So this means that SIP services like Overdrive will continue to authenticate, but they'll be authenticating against our training database. And then with the Power Pack redirect, patrons will be able to search the training Power Pack and view their account information. So it will essentially be a view-only tool for the patron. Any functions like placing holds and renewing items will be disabled. So this also allows training Leap to be accessible to existing CCS library staff throughout the offline period. Staff will be able to use Training Leap as a reference tool to look up patron accounts and search for materials. However, this only applies to current CCS libraries. Like I mentioned in a previous slide, the morning's data sync will overwrite existing data in training, which includes the Warren-Newport data. So Warren-Newport patrons and items will not be present in the training database. Now, even though CCS library staff will have access to Leap, to reference patron records and reference your holdings, we don't want staff to accidentally enter any transactions into training during the offline period, because any transactions that happen in training at this time will be lost when we come back online. They will not make it back over to production. So to minimize that risk, we will remove staff permissions in Training Leap for key actions. So staff will not be able to check out materials, check in materials, or place holds. So CCS will work to restrict permissions, but it's the responsibility of each staff member to really follow those procedures. So the sip and pack redirect will take place at 9:30. At this time, CCS will additionally be given time to prepare any end of the month web reports. So these monthly reports will compile and will be posted to web reports and accessible to staff during the downtime. And I saw there were some chats that came in, so I'm going to pause.
You addressed them already, so you are good to go.
Oh, great. So we said that Innovative will redirect our production power pack over to training during offline. And I wanted to give you a preview of what patrons will see. So users who go to the power pack will automatically be redirected to the system level power training pack. And again, this allows patrons to be able to do a search and view their account information. Now, again, holdings and patron information will be current as of the morning of August 31st, because that's when our database sync will happen. And as the weekend goes on, the data will become outdated. And also, like I mentioned, features such as placing holds, updating account information, those will be shut off and not available to patrons. So this is a mock-up of what patrons are going to see during Go Live weekend. All production packs are going to be redirected to this single pack interface. So this is just a system level interface everyone will be funneled to. So what we're going to do here, CCS is going to put up a banner on top and a custom content image. And this just alerts patron that account access and searching is going to be limited and encourage patrons to contact the library to confirm material availability. In addition to those customizations, we will also have a message on the items out page indicating that returned items will not be checked in until after the offline period. And then finally, text on the holds page, just indicating that holds cannot be placed at this time. So we have all that activity happening the night of August 31st. And then CCS libraries will begin using remote offline circulation at the start of the day, September 1st. So all libraries will continue to use remote offline from Friday, September 1st through Monday, September 4th. In a previous survey, the majority of respondents indicated that they preferred concentrating downtime during the weekend. And in addition, this is Labor Day weekend, so about 75% of our libraries are closed on Sunday. All of our libraries are closed on Monday. We will once again be sending out a post-migration survey after libraries are live again. And we would love feedback to see if this type of scheduling is still beneficial for you or if there's another model. So what services are going to be available and unavailable during offline? I'm going to take the next couple of slides just to kind of review what we'll have and what we won't have. So honestly, we're not going to have too many services available to us during offline. Libraries can check out materials to patrons, and this includes ready for pickup holds. Optionally, libraries can also register new patrons, and I'll review more details about patron registration during the offline demo. Another optional service is hourly non-holdable material check-in. So these are like hourly use materials that are not eligible for holds, such as potentially laptops or other in-house use equipment. Those type of things may be checked in. If your library will opt to do hourly material check-in, Your library should determine which materials would be eligible for offline check-in, and then just set up an internal procedure. And then because of the SIP and the PAC redirect, users can search the Power Pack and the training version of LEAP. But keep in mind, data in the PAC and LEAP are going to be current as of the morning of August 31st. So this means that checkouts or actions that occurred during the day, August 31st, through the end of offline will not be reflected in training LEAP or PAC. So as the weekend goes on, data will become outdated because it's not reflecting any of those new checkouts. And then finally, for those existing CCS libraries, we will have that database and SIP authentication run against training. So for services that use SIP, again, Overdrive is the big example here, it will reference the training database to authenticate patrons. And again, I'm going to say this one more time, training data will be current as of the morning of August 31st. So any new patrons registered after that data sync will not be present in the training data and will not be able to be authenticated. And again, repeating myself, we will unfortunately not have any Warren-Newport data in the training database at this time. So no Warren-Newport users will be able to be authenticated this way. We will have many more unavailable services. So library staff may not check your general material in. So in offline circulation, there's no way for offline to let you know if material should transit to another library or if it's on hold for a patron or otherwise requires action. So libraries will wait until we're back online to check in, and this includes Rails delivery. Libraries will not be able to run the pick list or process holds. They will not be able to modify patron records. We won't be able to renew patrons or edit contact information. Patrons won't be able to pay fees. Libraries won't be able to create interlibrary loan or on-the-fly records. And then technical services functions will not be available. So libraries will not be able to add or edit item records or BIP records or any other activities that require using the database. And finally, API services will be unavailable. So while Innovative has the ability to redirect SIP authentication to our training database during offline, a redirect option is not available for API. And this is available on our website. I will show you where to find this information at the end of the webinar. But this is a list of vendors who at one point requested Polaris API information. So we can anticipate that they use API to authenticate patrons and will be down during offline. So this includes services such as Access 360, Cloud Library, Hoopla, and Canopy. So if you have any vendors that you want to check in with about authentication, confirm with them directly. Check to see how they authenticate patrons, if there's going to be any access options available during an offline period. And then just know CCS will be available during the offline period. So if you have an urgent issue that needs to be resolved immediately, call the CCS main line so that we can resolve it as soon as possible. Urgent issues, those are ones that prevent staff from doing their job. So for example, if you can't check out items to patrons during offline, that is an urgent issue. Call us directly so that we can get started on fixing it immediately. For any non-urgent questions, you can email help@ccslib.org. We will respond during regular business hours. And of course, when in doubt, just default, give us a call. So let's talk about actually getting to that go live. Innovative will complete processing our database on Monday, September 4th. And once complete, CCS and Innovative will do quality assurance testing to make sure that everything looks good. CCS will load your remote circulation offline files. The PAC and SIP redirect to training will be removed. If database processing and QA keeps on schedule, the SIP redirect will be removed around 10 p.m. on Monday night. So CCS will send out communication to libraries both on Monday night to confirm that we are on track to be online for the 5th, and then another communication early Tuesday morning to confirm that libraries can resume using Polaris. So Warren-Newport will remain offline for Tuesday. All other CCS libraries will be online at the start of the day. You can turn your sorters and your self-checks back on for the start of the day. If your library used self-checks in offline mode, you will load offline files according to your vendor's instructions. And then starting on Wednesday, September 6th, Warren-Newport will officially be online with Polaris. So that was an overview of the offline schedule. Before we move into the remote offline review, I just want to pause again to see if there are any questions about the offline schedule.
Nothing has come through in the chat.
Great. I'll keep thinking. We'll have some more time at the end for more questions. I'm going to jump into our remote offline review. So Polaris features two types of offline mode. We have local offline, where the client is downloaded directly onto your computer. It's used when we cannot access those Polaris remote servers, typically when like a library loses internet connection. Remote offline, however, is used when we can still access those remote offline servers. We just can't access our own database, like in the case of a library migration. So for this migration offline period, we will be using remote offline. Again, we have access to the Polaris remote servers. We just aren't able to access our own database. So with remote offline, the transactions are stored on the Polaris remote servers. And this means that CCS can access those files. And so we will upload the transaction files on behalf of the libraries. Each file will generate an error report where it gives information about checkouts that could not be completed. So maybe the patron barcode number was incorrect, or the item barcode was incorrect. Libraries can request their error reports from CCS if they would like to review them. So at this time, I'm just going to stop sharing my slides, and I will begin sharing my desktop so that we can look at our offline review. Okay. Sure. So let me exit out of here and make sure everyone can see my desktop.
Yes, we can see it.
Excellent. Okay. So for remote offline, we are just going to use our normal production staff client. Now, depending on your computer setup, you may need to enter credentials to connect to the remote server like I do here. So let me just pop in my password. Some of your computers may be set up to automatically connect. Mine does not, so I do need to enter these credentials to connect to the terminal server. So basically, this is just connecting me to their servers. There we go. If you are asked to enter these types of credentials, consult with your IT department if you need information about what password to use at this stage. So once we are connected to the remote servers, we will be prompted to log in to the staff client. Now, to work in offline mode, you will select this little checkbox for work offline. And this shifts us into that remote offline mode. And the nice thing is, since we are working in remote offline, we only need to enter in our Polaris username. So I'm going to enter in Landers. You don't need to enter your password. And then click OK to complete logging in. One thing you want to visually note here, you'll just want to make sure that the client banner is blue, like you see here. And that is a visual that you are working in the production staff client. Since we are working in offline, many staff client actions will be inaccessible. So we won't be able to perform any of these staff technical services functions. You see they're all grayed out here. And things like, the staff client reports and notices area is also grayed out. Looking at the circulation options, we do see that checkout and check-in are accessible. Now, again, aside from those hourly use materials, we do not want to check in during offline. Check-in triggers a lot of those secondary actions, like setting things in transit or things going on hold. We will not be informed about that here. So we are going to wait till we're back online to check in our general materials. For today's demo, we're going to be looking at checkout and patron registration. We're going to start with checkout. To checkout, you will go to circulation and then checkout. So I'm just going to click here to open it up. Since I just logged in, the first thing I want to do is to make sure that I am set up to print checkout receipts. So I'm going to open up this Tools menu and go to Options. And now in the Options area, I want to make sure that the checkbox next to Checkout Receipt is selected and that my style is sent to Receipt. And then you will set your printer and driver options as appropriate for your library. So I'm going to keep my printer and driver settings as is, like this. Again, yours may look different depending on your library setup. And then finally, I will click OK to confirm these options. So now that our receipt options are set up, we are ready to check out to patrons. I have, since I don't have a scanner or any materials with me, I did pop in some test barcodes here that I can copy and paste. That's what we're going to use today. So let me copy my patron. To open a patron's record, you'll just scan their barcode into the patron barcode field. Make sure that the barcode is entered correctly, right? Just kind of do a visual glance at the patron's barcode. Make sure the number scanned in correctly. And once the barcode is ready, I'm going to hit enter on my keyboard to bring up this user. So if there's a record of the patron in our offline files, the patron's name and library should populate these fields. And then to check out an item, copy paste my first item, I will just scan it right into this item barcode field. So I'm just going to paste it in and hit enter. At this time, staff may see a block alert appear. Some conditions will prompt a block alert. We have a list on our website. Again, I will show it to you at the end of the session. But just kind of in a nutshell, you will see a block alert if the patron has a library assigned block, a free text block, a system level block, which includes things like card expiration alerts, or a collection agency block. Other conditions will not prompt a block. So these might be conditions like the patron has a long overdue item or the patron owes money. So again, at the end of the webinar, I'll show you where you can find a list of these conditions. In offline, items are going to check out for a default loan period. So my library's default loan period is set to 3 weeks. So everything I check out is going to default to a 3-week checkout. As you're testing, if you notice that your library's default loan period is not set to what you want, email help@ccslib.org and we can adjust that, we can adjust that default loan period for you. If you need to give a non-default loan period, you can set a special loan before scanning the item barcode. So before I scan my next item, I am going to click this special button so I can assign a special due date. I am able to choose a date from the calendar, or I can enter a loan period value. So for example, I can pop in 14 and I can designate if that is 14 days, 14 hours, or even 14 minutes. So for my next item I'm going to scan, I want it to check out for 14 days. And then finally, you've got these buttons here, and this allows you to apply the special loan period just to the next item you check out, right? So apply to next item only will apply this special date to the next item I scan. After that item is checked out, the loan period will go back to the default. I can apply the loan period to all items for this patron. So this will apply the special loan to all subsequent items checked out to this user. After I complete checking out to this patron, the loan period will go back to the default for the next patron. Or I can apply the special loan to all checkouts moving forward, and the adjusted loan period will be applied until I reset or I log out. So for demonstration's sake, I'm going to choose this just for the next item, and then I will click OK to apply. Now I see that special loan value displayed, and this is my visual that the special loan is active. So let me check out the next item to this patron. So again, I'll just scan the item barcode right into that item barcode field. And now I have my 2-week due date assigned. Because I asked to apply the special loan just to the next item, the loan period automatically reset, and now it is back to the default. I'm going to go back into special loan. I also want to demo how to manually reset the special loan if you need to. So I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to say apply to all checkouts moving forward. Let's check out one more item to the patron. So I checked out this next item. It assigned a 7-day loan period. And you see I still have my visual that the special loan is active. If I need to manually reset that, all you need to do is click this reset button and it will reset the loan period back to your library's default. So now when I check out the next item, it will assign that 3-week period. Once you've finished checking out to the patron, we're going to close the record and print a checkout receipt. So to perform both these actions, you will make sure your cursor is in this empty item barcode field and then hit enter on your keyboard. So this is going to close the patron. It will print the checkout receipt. And now we are all set to scan the next patron's barcode. So that is checking out in remote offline. I'm going to just pause, see if there's any questions before we demo patron registration.
No chat questions at this time.
So I'm going to close my checkout screen. And let's talk about patron registration. So registration is optional. If the library decides they are going to register patrons during offline, you will need to designate one circulation workstation to use just for patron registration. So just patron registration can happen on this workstation. No checkouts can occur. In order to avoid load errors, we need to load all patron registration transactions first before loading any checkout transactions. So this is why when you're doing registration, you need to have that dedicated workstation. If your library does want to register new patrons during the offline period, submit the designated workstation name to CCS by August 30th. And that way we know which files are the registration files. We can upload those first. So just email help@ccslib.org with that workstation name. Okay. So to register patrons in offline, we will go to patron services and then patron records. And this will open a new patron registration work form. This work form looks very different than the LEAP registration work form, but it contains all of the same fields. In the client, registration is split up into a couple different tabs, and you can navigate back and forth using those icons on the left-hand side. So you've got this first icon here is our first view, and then the second icon is our second view or the general view. So I'm going to enter in some information here. So we're going to start with the patron's barcode, and I'm just going to make something up. Line test 1, 2, 3, and then the patron's last name and first name. You will want to check that the registered at branch, the patron code, and that expiration term are set appropriately. The defaults in the patron registration will appear as they do in LEAP, but always a good idea, just double check to make sure that things look good. When you are ready to input a patron's address, you will select this Add button, and that will open up a dialog box where you can input address information. So let me make some stuff up here. I am still in the process of learning CCS's new office address, so I try to input it as much as possible so I can learn it. Okay. Once you have that address information in, click OK. If you are registering a user who has two addresses, maybe for some reason they're giving you both their home address and their work address, you can continue to click Add to add additional addresses to the user's record. And then another field you'll just want to eyeball to make sure that it looks correct is this address check date, and that's right under the address fields. So at the bottom of this first tab here, this is where we have our contact and notice information. So you will fill out the email address, phone number, and notification options as you normally do. Just pop in. And then I'll pop in a phone number too. Okay. So once this first tab is set, you'll use the buttons here on under offline registration to toggle to that second tab. This is the general tabs. This has a lot of that information, like those attributes and a lot of the profile info. So at the minimum, you'll want to fill out the statistical class, birth date, and the ILL-RB library code fields. So those are the required fields when we're in Polaris. In LEAP. If you forget one of those fields, Polaris will still register the user, and then staff can just input the missing fields when they next review or edit this user's account. So let me make sure. I'm going to enter in my statistical class. We'll enter in a birth date. We'll say this is a very young user. And then the ILL-RB library code, that's the last required field. And I'm going to pretend like I am an Algonquin user. If the user is under 18, enter in their parent guardian information as well. Once you have that information filled out and you are ready to save, click the Save icon in the upper left-hand corner. So you'll get confirmation that the patron's record was saved. I'll say OK. And then it will reset the work form for the next new patron. Now, any user who is registered and offline will automatically have a Verify User block placed on their card. So libraries who are going to do offline patron registration, they will get reports from CCS of patrons registered during offline. So you can review that information and add in any required fields that were missed, and then also remove the block. Okay, close out of my patron registration work form. So we reviewed how to check out and how to register a patron. And once again, going to pause, see if there's any questions or anything that you want to, I can review again.
There are no chat questions yet.
So keep thinking of them. We're going to have more, again, we'll have time at the end for questions. The last thing I'm going to demo here is logging out. So when you're using offline, it's important to log out every 2 to 3 hours. When you log out, that completes the transaction file. And by logging out at regular intervals, that ensures that we can create smaller transaction files and helps prevent us from losing a whole day's worth of checkouts if anything happens to a transaction file. So again, the recommendation, log out every 2 to 3 hours. To log out, you will go to File and then Log Off. And I will confirm by clicking OK. So at this point, a transaction file is completed. During the day, we'll then go right back into File and to Log On. So if you remember from our initial log on, we will select the checkbox to work offline. We will enter our Polaris username and click OK. I'm back online. I'm ready to check out again. So bringing us back full circle here. To prep checking out, I'm going to Circulation, Checkout. And then again, since I just logged on again, I want to double check to make sure that my offline is set up to print receipts. So I will go to Tools and Options and just make sure that those receipt settings are in place. So again, you'll go log off and log back on every 2 to 3 hours, help create those smaller transaction files and prevent any loss. At the end of the day, when you are ready to close down, you will go to File and Exit. And this will simultaneously log you off, create that transaction file, and close the client. So I'm just going to confirm, okay. And then you should have this log off button here. I'm going to click the log off. This closes our connection to that remote server. So at the end of the day, I can click my log off and confirm, and it's going to sever my connection to the remote database. So for every transaction file, Polaris is going to generate a report. So libraries, again, they're going to receive those reports for patron registration. For checkout reports, libraries can opt to receive them if they want to review. So the checkout reports are going to include both warnings and errors. Warnings, those are conditions that don't prevent checkout. Those are things like, hey, this user owed some money. Errors will list items that could not check out to the patron. So like when the barcode may be scanned incorrectly. So again, if the library would like their checkout warning and error reports, you can email help@ccslib.org and request those reports. Feel free to email us leading up to go live, or you can email that Tuesday that we're back online. So it does look like, I'm going to go back to my slides. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. It looks like some chats came in, so we can take care of those too.
Okay, this is Kathleen. I am reading a chat from Indian Trails. They just asked that if you could please remind everyone that a special printer driver is needed to be able to print receipts.
Okay. And again, that's something you'll want to work with your IT on. That might be, oh, I'm sorry, yes. You're talking about the screwdriver software. We will get to that in one of the next slides. Okay. Anything else?
Not in the chat.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen again. Maybe. Let me see here. There we go.
Oh,
Now
Mika,
it's kicking on. Yeah.
can I ask, we had one more question come in I want to ask before you kick into the next session. Dana asks, is it horrible if someone accidentally clicks exit instead of log off?
That's not horrible. That still creates a transaction file. If you exit, then you'll just have to click on that client icon again to log in.
Thanks.
So let's round this out by looking at some tasks that your library can do to prepare for offline. So the first thing is to decide if your library is going to register patrons during offline. If you are, libraries, again, needs to designate one circulation workstation for patron registration to help minimize those load errors. So no checkouts can occur on this workstation. Send that workstation name to CCS by August 30th. We need that workstation name so we can upload those files first. You'll also want to make sure that the Polaris staff client is installed on computers that will be used for offline circulation. And then review and test those remote offline before we actually go offline. So you'll want to make sure the client is installed properly and that your default loan period is correct. Make sure staff who will be using remote offline know how to use it and have access to instructions as backup. We have documentation on our website. I'm going to show you exactly where to find it. One recommendation is to just keep a browser window open to that how-to page so staff can click in and check it out if they need to. You'll want to test printing receipts in Polaris offline, and you want to make sure that the printing screwdriver software is installed on those computers and that your printers are set up correctly. Finally, you'll want to make sure that staff who are working during offline and go live periods will get the CCS news. This is how we're going to send communication, which is going to include things like project status updates and confirmation when we're back online. So staff can register individually on our website. If you scroll down to the bottom of the site, you'll see a little field where you can enter your email in and register. Or if you want to register staff in bulk, open a help desk ticket and just list out those emails you want to subscribe, and we can get them, we can upload that into our MailChimp. And then finally, I'm going to got some links here to resources mentioned during this webinar. First is the Warren-Newport Public Library migration page on our website. This is where you're going to find the go live schedule, information about offline, including a list of things like available, unavailable services. The second is the how-to page for using remote offline. So this has instructions on how to perform checkouts and patron registration. And finally is a link to the help desk. If you find you have any questions about the migration or offline, you can open a help desk ticket by going to ccslib.freshdesk.com or just email help@ccslib.org. So before I switch over to our website and show you those web pages we just mentioned, I'm going to stop once more for questions. And also, just to let you know, I am going to share the recording and slides directly with anyone who registered. We will also share the recording and slides through CCS News and post them to the migration page on our website so everyone will have access to it. I absolutely encourage you to share with any of your colleagues who is interested. We want to make sure staff are informed about what to expect during this go live process. So I'm going to stop again and open it up for more questions.
Okay, so you had two questions come in from the chat. One says, we're going to try to only use the self-checks for checkout, but I keep psyching myself out regarding uploading the offline files. Can you clarify for me which files are needed to be manually uploaded by libraries?
Yeah. So local offline files need to be manually uploaded by libraries, and that's the checkout mode libraries use when they don't have access to the internet, right? That's your local client. In terms of self-checks, you will need to check with your vendor to see how they upload the files. That process may differ from vendor to vendor.
So we have two more questions. Four more questions that bumped up fast. Okay. Brent at McHenry asks, can we review the slide referring to actions we need to take on the go live date for CCS libraries on September 5th? And maybe we'll do that one last because you're walking through a slide and some of the other ones are just kind of easier questions. So if that's okay, Miyuko.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Brent, real quick, is it the preparing for offline that you wanted to see? I'll leave it up here. If there's a different slide you want to see, let me know. Like I said, we will also share the slides out with everyone, so you will have access to the whole thing.
Oh, Brent says, just wondering what we will. Sorry, we just got a bunch all at once. My bad, guys. Hold on. Okay, Brent says, just wondering what we will need to do after the go live.
Oh, sure. So after libraries are live, if you are using self-checks in offline mode, you'll want to bring them back online. And again, follow your vendor instructions for making sure those offline files are uploaded. If your library has a sorter, you'll bring your sorter back online. I think I know which slide you're talking about here. Let me go back. So libraries will turn their sorters on, turn their self-checks back on, and load the self-check files based on your vendor instructions. This is totally optional. If your library does want to review the offline circulation error reports, email CCS. We can send those your way if you like to take a look at them. You'll have a lot of check-ins and a lot of Rails delivery to process that day as well.
Great. Okay. Liz and Donna from Huntley ask, if we would like to test using remote offline, should we notify CCS when doing so?
It's up to you. You can, we would be happy for you to notify us. Let us know like the workstation that you are using when testing remote offline, because then what we can do is CCS can go in and upload those files, and then you can just check your like test patron accounts to make sure those checkouts are there.
Okay, great. Stephanie at Lincolnwood asked, staff who are checking materials for patrons to see if they are available, should they directly use the training database during this time?
Yes, you do want to link directly to Training Leap and log into Training Leap. We have the link to Training Leap up on our website, and then we're also going to share it in upcoming CCS news just to make sure that libraries all have access to that URL.
Great. Gwen at Grays Lake asks, will holds still be scheduled to expire on September 1st and 2nd, even though we won't be able to check them in and cancel them?
I love that you asked this, Gwen. They will not expire on the 1st and the 2nd. So we have proactively entered in like fake close dates for all of our libraries. So during that offline period, no items will be due, and those close dates will not count towards the held period. So no holds are going to become unclaimed on the 1st and the 2nd.
One more question from Gwen. She says, what suggestions do you have for patrons who come in to renew cards?
I would say that is up to your library. I know from previous offline periods, some libraries internally may opt to just go ahead and check out items to expired patrons and then just let them know, like, we're down for maintenance, please come in and renew after the 5th. So if that works, again, internal decision, you can totally do that. Or, your library can opt to say, your card is expired, we can't check out to you right now.
I have three more things. One's a comment and two are questions. Let's see, this comes from Indian Trails. They say, if the library uses deep freeze at the end of each day, deep freeze needs to be inactive during this time so that the files will update. And that is referring to, I think that's referring to if you're passing along your checkouts remotely.
So with remote offline, all of the transaction files are stored on the Polaris remote server. So they're not stored on your local drives, your local computer. I wonder if this is tied to a local offline thing.
Okay. They also have a question. Do all items renew 3 weeks automatically, or will it follow what each item is set at?
Once things are back online and the items come due to be renewed, they're going to renew based on the Polaris tables. So it will reference like what the actual loan period is.
Great. Brent at McHenry asks, I may have missed this. For patrons that we register during offline, will they also be able to do same-day checkouts? And there's a follow-up for that. Will we need to log out of the station we are registering patrons at in order for those registrations to be active?
No, again, this is another question that I love. So this is the big reason why we upload those patron registration files first. So anyone who registers during offline will also be able to do same-day checkouts. And the reason for that is because we upload the registration files first so we can create the record. And that means that when it comes time to upload the checkout files, they can successfully check out to that patron record.
Great. Gwen at Grays Lake asks, if during checkout a patron hits a material type limit, will a pop-up alert us?
I don't believe, I'm going to double check on this, but I don't believe that we'll get material type limit. So I'm going to check and I will include it in the follow email that has the slide and video link.
Dan at Northbrook asks, will Communico integration work during this time? For example, if patrons reserve study rooms that authenticate against their card numbers, will it use the training database to authenticate?
I think Communico is one of those API services. Let me go back to my slide just to double check. Yeah, my answer is going to be that it probably will not authenticate. You may want to double check with your Communico rep just to double check and see if there's like an alternative way to authenticate.
And then I think last comment that I hadn't addressed, Indian Trails kind of asking about deep freeze again. They had said that in the past, they lost everything due to deep freeze being active and it had to do with daily backups. So maybe that's a good opportunity to test that remote offline and see if it's working the way that they expect before can add that to their checklist.
Yeah, that would be a great test. Check out using remote offline, let it sit overnight, and the next day reach out to CCS and say, hey, do you see this transaction file from this workstation? And then we can double check, make sure that the file is there.
Okay, and then they can always, sounds like you can always just stop the deep freeze during that time if you've had a bad experience. Okay. Let's see here. They said we're turning off our backups for that weekend to prevent loss of data. Okay, you guys are on it. You're so prepared. I love it with your good examples. So, okay, so with that, I don't see any more questions in the chat and we're up on 11 o'clock. So I think you timed this perfectly. Were there any other questions, whether in chat or you want to unmute yourself and ask?
While we're waiting for anything else to come in, real quick, I did just want to go to our website and show you where you can find those resources. So under the member tools menu, you will see the page about Warren-Newport Public Library migration. I'm sure you've probably seen this linked in the last couple of weeks for CCS News, but this has all of the information about our go live schedule, offline circulation, the SIP and PAC redirect. So this is where you can find information about those block alerts that you see and will not see. We have the list of vendors that have requested at one point some kind of API key. And then finally, under the how-to, if we go to the public services department how-to, there is a section on offline, and the section we want is using remote offline. So these are the instructions for how to check out, register patrons, and do that log off in remote offline. So let's see. Oh, do offline receipts show the due dates of the items checked out? They do. And Huntley checked with Hoopla and they indicated we use SIP. Oh, that's good. That'll be one more tool your patrons have access to. So I'm going to stop the recording at this time.